now that we've got our quorum. So let's do a roll call. Mark, can you start us off?
Mark Evans.
Marissa Roberts.
Sarah Riley.
Adrienne McGinnis. Emily Lee.
All right, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a flag over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I believe we are going to start on our district update with our AP recognitions. Jerry, are you going to do that one?
Yes, we're friends.
Okay.
I think for expediency's sake, we are going to do the announcements and then we're going to give them their certificates and their checks afterwards, after the pictures and everything. So I really think Lainey is going to take it and she's going to make those announcements. But first off, before we do that, I do want to say to parents and to the students, it has been a pleasure to get to know these students. I don't know if you kind of realize, if you've been here a long time, what a special place it is when this high of a percentage of students is involved in AP courses. So, you go to a Bentonville High School or Siloam Springs High School where I came from, there are lots of students and there are more students, but the percentage of students that are participating is very high here. And these students are tremendous leaders for our school. And so I want to start by just asking for a round of applause to celebrate them and their hard work. So as Ms. Adams calls your name, you're going to come up and we're actually going to line up and then we'll set up for a picture with you guys. And then we're going to go down the hallway a little ways to get your certificates and your checks just to make it go faster. Okay, so take it away.
And I'm going to give you a little bit of information just about how we did on our AP scores in general. We had a slides presentation for you, but I think it got disconnected somehow. So we have a lot of students receiving certificates today. And when you see them come up here, I want you to think about that AP courses can result in college credits. So this could be an average savings of $1,500 per credit hour, which is almost $5,000 savings per exam that they score a 3 or above. So that's really fantastic for our students. With 87 individual exams that scored a 3 or above, that would be almost $400,000 in potential savings for our student group that'll be coming up here today. A couple other points to mention. Sorry to find it in my slides. So we had several classes that the average for the class scored above the state average, which I think is really noteworthy. English Lit, Physics 1, United States History, and World History Modern all scored above. Oh, there's the slides. Here we go. And this is after all the kids' names, but it's in there. And then we had several classes that scored above not just the state, but also the global average score for the course, which was our 2D art and design, English language and composition, and psychology. So we had a lot of really great scores on this exam. All right. So without further ado, we're going to start with our students who scored a 3. We have 41 students who will be coming forward. And if I butcher anybody's name, I am so sorry. So sorry. Deontay Archiga, Isabella Ash, Skylar Baird, Miles Baker, Derek Bass, Saxon Bauman, Hannah Bonsavvy, Alex Craig, Madeline Dardine, Ariana Davis, Robin Dinwiddie, Teresa Ferrigny, Jacob Fisher, Chance Fitzpatrick, Kiara Flores, Tristan Foster, Hayden Fritz, Emma Gastineau, Evelyn Gillespie, Samuel Hansen, Mehek Hayer, Claire Hillam, Lexa Job, Tabitha Lance, Sophia LaPlante, Maxwell Mate, Aviana Mock, Whitney Mellick, Devin Oldham, Langley Parrish, William Randolph, Abigail Riley, Josephine Stallings, Nathan Shrestha, Aiden Slaughter, Malia Spencer, Aiden Steele, Lizzie Tucker, Jackson Williams, Rebecca Wilson, and Alexander Verbal. So let's start with giving these kids a huge round. And several of these kids scored a 3 on multiple exams, and several of them will be back up again for scoring a 4 or a 5.
Let's move to the stairs.
Yeah, let's take. Do we want to get one with the whole big group of everybody?
Let's get this group and we'll put the board
Okay.
down and then we'll.
Perfect.
If you guys will move to the stairs, I think we can do one shot.
Give her some ice.
It's a very large group. Well, she'll be real tall right now.
Okay, perfect. That sounds great. So here, I'll talk to you over here then. I'm mobile, I can do that. All right, so we have 24 students who scored a 4 on one or more. Several of these were multiple exams. So this time, when I call you up, we'll already be saved for our picture. All right, David Atkins, Summer Andrews, Hannah Bonsevi, Gabriella Calix, Sabrina Craig, Teresa Ferrigny, Molly Ford, Kristen Foster, Emma Gastineau, Haven Gonzalez, Samuel Hansen, Abigail Husky, Lexa Job, Maxwell Make, Emily Malone, Savannah Mobley, Tyson Peluso, Caroline Riddell, Josephine Stallings, Taylor Sarche, Vincent Schreiner, who is not here, he is in Germany, he's our exchange student, Scarlett Taylor, Alexander Verbal, and Caitlin Welch.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3.
All right, then we have our students who scored a 5, which is really an impressive accomplishment. So the following students, there are 6 of them. Please come forward. Robin Dinwiddie, Claire Hillam, Savannah Mobley, Tabitha Lance, Caroline Rydell, and Vincent Ryder. Oh, perfect. All right, I will be down here at the table down the hall for you guys to get your certificates and sign for your checks. So if you would like to not hang out for the entirety of the board meeting, you can be here. Every time All right, let's move on to our next item. Tell us about your CEO retreat. So we went to the convening for the Charter Seed Growth Fund retreat, which was an amazing experience. There was approximately 350 CEOs charter schools across the nation. And the convening was really about sharing best practices, talking about commonalities, which we all shared as charter schools, enrollment, budget, finances, fundraising, all of those things. I left really feeling like I already knew we have an amazing school, but I felt like we are doing so many things right that I was so proud of the work that we've accomplished. In addition to the conference, we participate in what we call a seminar, which really is a lot of opportunity for us. For me, Jamie can do it as also Renee of finance to log in and get connected with leaders in those particular areas. So leaders in charter school finance, leaders in charter school enrollment, PR, marketing, all of those things, and have just a one-way, two-way conversation or go into a larger group setting. So the conference sort of has continued through this platform that we can access. In addition, there's a lot of templates that come through as practices that our other leaders are using and implementing in their schools. So, for example, on just different types of curriculum pacing guides and all of these things that are really geared to success in charter schools. That was very important. So I think our next step, in addition to all of these connections, is, making really good use of all these tools that are coming for us or towards us and how we implement that. In addition, with this cohort model, they roll out individual grants within the model that we can apply for because we're in the cohort. So I've already applied for one for policy advocacy around surrounding our work with trauma-informed care. And so I'll find out whether or not we hit the mark on that. But they're constantly looking for other avenues for their support network to help fund and help grow. But it was an amazing experience. I brought back a lot, and I think we will continue to reap the benefits of this acceptance in this cohort for years to come. It was great to see leaders that were in their first year, like we are, or that are in their 10th year, that still are supported by this network that continues to benefit from these collaborations and this really process oriented. I get monthly calls, checks in. I had one today. And what that looks like is, what can we do for you? What are your problem areas that you maybe need assistance? Who can we connect you with? And that's incredible experience, feeling that sometimes that we're the only one. Like, I was one of the few single operating charter leaders there. A lot of charters are in networks, so they're a CMO. So as a single operator, it was really good to talk to a few others that are in the same exact situation. How do they handle their finances? How do they handle their philanthropy? How do they handle recruitment? And realize that a lot of the same conversations are existing, across the United States. So it was incredible. So thank you.
Excellent. All right, our next item is art for learning and information.
So I'll speak on that. We are going to have an information night regarding art for learning in January.
And we're going to connect that into when Artful Learning comes again for the next follow-up at the elementary school. So we're in year 3 of that professional development support at elementary. And we're going to do a whole gallery outfit of all the Artful Learning connections and what Artful Learning looks like for us as our pedagogy as integration. We're going to have the director of Artful Learning come in, Patrick Bullock. He's going to actually address parents, speak to parents. We're going to have a real information night at the elementary school where parents can walk around and see the classroom integrations and look at the content connections. And then we're going to have the gallery outfitted with the projects and also the curricular connections as well. So we're going to really do an embrace for the public as we gear up for hopefully the phase 2 of what that looks like, moving that model into the high school. So I'll give you information on when that is. I think you would all really love to sit and listen to Patrick and talk about what he's seen at the elementary school, the progress that they've made as far as curriculum. We'll look at some data. We'll look at sort of engagement, student attendance, and those kind of metrics that we set out as our success measures. But we're also going to inform our parent community and just community in general. This is how we deliver our operational model. This will also kind of coincide with recruitment and registration for the lottery as we try to, include more parents into our school.
Okay, we're going to move to our employees and teachers of the month. And since we missed last month, we've got September and October. So I'm not 100% sure who is here, but our September employee of the month is Abby Tabor. Abby, Rachel, you want to say something nice about why?
No. So Abby is our 4th grade science teacher. She was our 5th grade science teacher last year. She has taken over the humongous job of doing space camp and planning and getting that prepared. And she's done a fantastic, she's done a fantastic job already. They've been raising money like crazy to try to send some kids on scholarships as well. And she's a fantastic teacher in the classroom. She's always getting coaching. She's probably requested the most coaching from our academic coach of any teacher in our building. Like, she is constantly improving and constantly going above and beyond for kids. She's just an amazing teacher all around.
Phenomenal. All right, let's take a pick.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And our elementary employee of the month, Joe Papina. Papania, sorry. Mr. Papania.
Fifth grade social studies teacher, and he was actually nominated the most out of any of our staff members for, because our teachers nominate and then we get the ones that are nominated and we vote for them. But he was nominated the most out of anyone in our staff. He is always bringing amazing energy to the history classroom. And there was a day where he was completely dressed head to toe in historical garb, doing all sorts of activities with the kids. The kids are so excited to go to his class. They're inspired because his joy of history comes out in the classroom, and our other teachers around the building have recognized that in him. So awesome. It's wonderful.
What did you dress up as?
I don't know, it was just a colonial outfit, let them decide what it to be.
That's awesome. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Got it. All right. Congratulations. And then our high school September employee of the month is Austin Smithers.
Could not make it tonight, and so
I will let you pass it on.
I'm accepting on his behalf.
Okay. And then, of course, this one doesn't surprise me because my child loves this person. Our October high school employee of the month, Rebecca Funderburg.
Same. They're both worn out from all the work they've been doing.
Exactly.
They run, so both of them, just for their record, they both do student council.
Okay.
And so they have been lots and lots and lots going on. So they're having some family time tonight. So.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, let's just move on to personnel changes. Is there anything of note that you want to discuss?
No, we've had some ebb and flow with personnel and we have replaced some staff. We had some staff leave unfortunately because they were moving out of state. And we have in the process replaced those staff. We only have two open positions at the high school right now. And that is in our sped and in our culinary. And it is to note that I've asked Terry to change our policies a little bit when we have open positions to make sure we notify all of our staff first in case there's any staff that's interested in that position. And then we'll push that out to a broader audience. That we notify the staff and let them know what's available so they hear it from HR first, hopefully, and then they have the opportunity if they want to make a shift, it's open to them.
All right. Our next item is comments from the public. Is there anybody here that wants to speak? I don't believe we have anyone signed up. No? Okay. Item number 6, we just need to do the consent agenda and approve last month's school board minutes. Does anyone have any concerns or corrections? No? All right. Can I get a motion to approve? So moved.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Our next item is the financials. We'll go to our trustee, Adrian.
I don't have any questions. You guys have questions? We need to approve, September and October. But,
Nothing of concern.
okay,
Can we get a motion to approve September and October?
so moved.
Second. All right. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right. Do we need to talk about the enrollment update?
We're kind of holding steady at about 950. We've had some leave, we've had some come, and so we're at a pretty good spot, I think, for about 100. Little more than 100 less than we were this time last year. But I think we're already started our lottery for next year. And we will begin to sort of go out with intent to return for these students that are coming in.
Okay. Oh, did I skip city council? Oh. Oh, okay. All righty. New business. We've got quite a few things. So the first one is the addition to the district policy for the student handbook. And it's the service animals in district facilities item. So I think we probably have a little bit of discussion on that. Adrian, do you want to?
I mean, I have some suggestions that I can send you on kind of reorganizing and reordering some of this so that the policies kind of lie together. As far as topics go, I just had a few questions about, have we had legal review it as written? We have, and I've kind of looked at some other district policies on what they've done. I think the gap for us is, and the reason I'm bringing it forward is we didn't have anything clear in our student handbook. So when a parent would request an IEP accommodation or a 504 accommodation, needing a service animal, we didn't have anything really to go by as far as knowing what to prepare for and also what to prepare our community for. So we needed those dogs to be trained and we needed our students to be safe and we needed responsibility to be on the individual student. And so this is why this is brought forth to add some clarity and expectations for that. So I can send a red line to you guys just so you can see some suggestions, but there is very specific law on this. And as a public school, we're required to follow that law. So several of my suggestions are just to strike some language that is maybe not clear cut, because the law is clear cut of what we can do and what we have to offer.
My only other suggestion would be to add, if this is going in our handbook, to add maybe some procedures. So we haven't addressed in these pages notification or communication on any side. So what does it look like if I'm a person that wants to bring a dog into school? I mean, the law is very clear about what that animal is able to do, and I think we've clearly defined that here according to the law. But as far as communication, like I can't just show up to school one day and be in a teacher's classroom with my dog, right? That there has to be some planning in place. So I think if we could outline that, that's going to help our administrators and our faculty. But there also needs to be a piece about what are the school's requirements for notification. So if we've been notified that a service dog will be used on our campus in our public places, what are our responsibilities, not only for notifying our staff, but notifying our other families, because other children will be impacted by this as well. So we just want to make sure that expectations are really clear as far as, you know, if this were to occur, you will get it, whatever that looks like for your administrators. You will get an email notification from your building principal or what, you know. And the law is also very clear about you cannot deny a service dog for reasons such as allergies or a child being afraid of that dog. But we do have to give our faculty and staff and our parents reasonable time to be able to reach out to a homeroom teacher or to a building level principal and say, these are the issues that my family or my child might have with this situation. But also for the person with the service dog to say, this is how this dog or animal, because also you can have a small pony, I read. Just throwing that out there. This is how this animal interacts with me in my life. This is what it looks like in the classroom. There really needs to be some kind of processes or procedures that our families, it doesn't have to be detailed, right? But just like a building level administrator should be notified how many ever days in advance before just showing up to school with a service animal. So I think if we can outline that too, that's going to give our parents and our faculty and staff a lot more kind of direction. In this.
And that's great feedback. So what I'll do is I'll give this to Dr. Langley, and I'll have Dr. Langley fine tune it, and we'll put it back on the next board agenda for your approval. But I appreciate you looking through that and being mindful of everyone that's inclusive about this situation.
So I guess include the board members and Dr. Langley on your, and then we can reconfigure.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns about how it's written? I mean, this covers the law for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that jumped out is we have to do the confidentiality piece and the notification piece, and I'm not entirely sure how that legally meshes, because we're not going to be able to say the child's name due to confidentiality law, but we probably have a duty to let parents know.
Right, and you certainly wouldn't be able to
that's-
share a diagnosis or
Right, that may be
disability.
a Marshall question perhaps.
Yeah, and I think too, they would never show up, so this would be a manifestation out of an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting. This would be a group decision that this was going to be the most impactful thing for a student to be successful at school. So it would take place in a room full of people that were going to be overseeing this.
So I think probably some
situation.
sentences about that, like this should be brought to
Yes.
an IEP meeting
Yes,
or a
it
building
has to be,
principal
there's a
or-
process for it to be approved.
Yeah.
But your feedback about the notification is very valid, and we will shore that up.
Excellent. And our next item was the excessive absence policy.
So this is going into our staff handbook, and what this really begins to identify is what we deem as employee excessive absences. There's a fine line between an employee that's legitimately sick and one that create, one that's taking advantage of the system. And I'm not saying we've had those employees, but we also don't have something that really clarifies what excessive looks like. Staff all receive sick days, and unfortunately, it's cold and flu season. But there is an expectation that there's a doctor's note that comes after a certain length of days, just so that we can better prepare students. So the end result is when the teacher's absent or administrator's absent, the fallout indirectly or directly impacts kids. So we're just trying to help some, put some parameters around what that looks like when it becomes a lot. And we also want to make sure that we're covering ourselves with intermittent FMLA. So if a teacher is really sick, we do have parameters in there that they can reach out and they can apply and receive intermittent FMLA, which doesn't have to be all in one chunk, but if they're having to go to doctor's appointments, or if they've got situations where, like, for example, migraines, that they need to be able to take the time off as sick leave, but also know that their job is secure. So we're just trying to cover all of our bases with this policy.
And is it safe to assume that this is kind of modeled after Rogers, Bentonville, the other school districts?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
Did you have some things that you thought needed to be added?
I'll let others go first.
Okay.
And
I
then
was
I'll-
fine with it, but anybody else have a concern?
I was fine with it too, except, there's a couple of bullet points in the excessively absent that aren't like super defined. Like what is that, what does possible mean? And should we be more clear about who makes that determination and what the actual,
So I marked that one as well. It's not a possible pay reduction. If you don't have the hours and you take them, then your pay gets deducted.
We're in a really strange system with our e-finance, and Adrian, you can probably speak to this, is we front load our sick days in advance. So, and that's just the way the system works, because we
You
have
don't
a
have a choice.
2 month pay period. If we go to 1 month, it'll be different, once a month. But all teachers at the beginning of the year get 10 sick days loaded onto their docket, so to speak. If they use all 10 days before they've actually earned them, one a month, then they're in arrears. So if they leave us after 2 months and they've used all 10 sick days, they haven't really necessarily earned those. So that would be lost in their final paycheck. We'd have to deduct that from your paycheck. It's based on the way we are currently paying out our employees. And it is confusing, especially with new teachers, when they say, oh gosh, I've got 10 sick days, I've already earned, you know. And so Terry's done a pretty good job. We're hoping this will also help kind of explain the way we process our sick days. And it sometimes, you know, is a need for that many days in a row. And we don't want to hold that away from an employee. They just need to know in advance what that looks like and how they can budget themselves moving forward.
I just think it should say that. That way they know.
All of that, yeah. Okay, we can add that in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my suggestions have to do with about the ambiguous language. Lots of mays, lots of mights, lots of, I think there's a lot of words here that when you're talking about policy and a handbook, not all of this explanation is needed. But also it's gotta be clearer, what happens when I've missed certain number of days. So saying it might occur that administrators schedule a meeting, like, no, they need to schedule a meeting. And once you hit a certain number of days, there needs to be a plan. So I'm concerned about the just ambiguous language. Like, site administration may establish short-term and long-term attendance improvement plans. That's not clear for our administrators or our employees. Like, it needs to say, after X number of days, you will meet with your building administrator and you will come up with a plan. And that plan may be like as short as half a page form that's like, whatever you said, like I suffer from migraines and I will, my building administrator is aware that I have to miss 2 days every 3 months to get this treatment, or whatever it looks like. It may be very simple. It doesn't need to read like it's a discipline issue every time, but I think you'll catch those discipline issues in this. But if it's so ambiguous that the building administrators don't know when to meet with employees and the employees don't know when they have to meet with their building administrators. I mean, if it's some weird thing where I got this random disease and I was in the hospital for 10 days, well, you still met that 7-day threshold. You're still gonna meet with your building administrator when you come back, and it's gonna be a note on a piece of paper like, this was a weird random thing that will never happen again.
Yeah, we can easily go back and assure it. Keep in mind, this is section 6.3, and there's a 6.4 and a 6.5 and 6. That all discuss just sort of employee responsibility. So this is an attempt to define what that means for Arkansas Arts. Generally, it's 10%. Like if you miss 10% of your work days, which in our case is 18.5. When in big school districts, they're at 190 versus 190. And that's because we have this alternative calendar. But we could go back in and add, more clear language, if that's an easy thing to do, and we can bring it back.
I would agree. Just having worked in a school district with like a union, everything was very clear in terms of, if you miss X amount of days, no matter what, and it's sort of like prevented any type of litigation or unfair treatment. The mites and mays are a little, I think they may even need to be defined by rules, because it may be, especially when it came to like submitting plans and different things like that. I'm sure there's policies in place within a school where there has to be sub-plans set up for at least a week. But, what does this look like? Does this look like I need to do plans for my 12-week maternity leave? Or, so just sort of like setting those parameters because it's not defined. While we may not expect anyone to do plans for a 12-week maternity leave, but if someone's going to be out for, I don't know, something else. I mean, I think it just needs to be clear.
Yeah, and I appreciate your feedback, because this is as we are setting policy.
Yes.
And we're filling in holes that we've identified that we still have. So it's important. So I will bring this back next month.
I would add some sort of wording in here about communication expectations. So the second paragraph is a lot of words, but it doesn't actually give instruction to the employee about what to do or the building administrators about what to expect. So like it says, requires timely and transparent communication. I think you need to say whatever that looks like. I mean, we expect our parents on the day of that your child is sick to call in that day, or if you know that there's anticipated absence, that you call that in ahead of time. So maybe some more instruction about how and when. Like, I would expect that you're gonna send Rachel an email. You're not gonna stop her at the lunch table and be like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna be out on Thursday for a dentist appointment. Like, there needs to be, if you're gonna be out, you need to notify, and I don't know who that looks like. Maybe it's somebody else in your building, or maybe you have department chair, whatever it is, but clear expectations of when and how. I mean, I've done the same thing, caught somebody in the hallway about business, and this needs to be, like, you need to put it in an email or whatever you guys have, Google Forms, whatever you use for requesting time off. Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, it looks a little bit different depending on who it is. Like, if it's a bus driver versus a teacher, cafeteria worker, or whatever that looks like. And it probably looks a little bit different the day of versus I know I'm gonna be out, or I'm scheduling this surgery and I'm gonna be down for 2 weeks or whatever. So probably more specifics about what the expectation is there, just that gives your administrators information, but it also allows them to hold their people accountable for, to your point, like, we're trying to teach kids, and if we don't have people here to do it, right, it's hard to do.
Yeah, I agree.
you mentioned FMLA. I mean, do we have a section in the handbook on FMLA? So I would put in here, if you're gonna be, if you're gonna be gone more than whatever that is, number of days, please refer to the FMLA section. Is there anything changing about this policy? Like, are we, like from a board's perspective, like what are we kind of adding on? Are we adding on like the consequences or?
We're mostly adding this whole section defining what excessive means.
Okay.
And there is some nebulous parts about based on what the role is. And especially positions that don't necessarily require a substitute.
Yeah.
But we don't want to overlook those positions because those are just as essential as everybody else. We don't want students impacted as much as possible. And so.
Sure, if your dishwasher doesn't show up every day for
Right.
5 days in a row,
Yeah.
that's gonna cause a train wreck.
Yeah.
So on the definitions, excessive absenteeism as being absent for more than 10% of the individual's contract. I think that's very clear. I don't think you need the next section. They should know what number contract they are, and everybody has a different number, so I think the 10% of your contract is fine. It's the before, excessive tardiness. Like, that's being late for more than 5 days, being late to class, what is excessive tardiness?
So we're defining excessive tardiness as 5 days, consistently 5 days of being late to report to work.
Okay, and like, is that by minute? Like, I'm late by 15 minutes, by 5 minutes, by an hour? I don't show up for a whole class
We
period?
didn't put a time frame in there, but I think some of that is dependent upon the administrator preview, like what that time frame looks like. 5 minutes as a classroom teacher is huge. 5 minutes in the cafeteria, not so much. But we can put some time frames in there. We try to make it as
I know it's hard.
general as possible,
Right.
but yet still have some expectations. But
I think that's where you could run into some
Yeah.
trouble, like, well, I wasn't late.
Or,
And late to somebody might be 5 minutes, or late to somebody might be showing up 5 minutes before class starts. That, you know, Rachel might say, I expect you all to be here 10 minutes before your class starts, or whatever that looks like, right? And then like, oh, well, I'm only 5 minutes after class starts, that's not late. Well, yeah, you are, because you're not here and ready to go. So I think, and it may say something like set by building level, expectations set by building level administrators, or something like that. I'm sure you guys probably go through orientation with your teachers. I see Alan shaking her head, yes, but
we'll shore this up.
we give them expectations. So you don't necessarily have to put time in here, but I think this one's a little too general. I think that you would have a lot of pushback on that.
I would say that they all, I mean, not being held to the same standard in terms of, you know, this rule can be.
Yes, you pick something.
Potential problem.
Yeah, pick something, and if that's, you know, your class starts at 8 and we expect you to, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, not a problem.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? So we'll bring that back in 3 weeks. Yep. Okay. All right. The calendar's not told, but let's go
No,
ahead.
but she needs it approved.
Yeah, let's go ahead and skip to the calendar real quick in case we get bogged down in the Atlas stuff. Okay, so the 25-26 calendar. Does anyone have any specific concerns or thoughts? Like about it? This is pretty much mirroring this year.
Pretty much mirrors this year. Administrators and I worked on this calendar. We really were mindful of when those parent-teacher conferences are. That there is because of our schedule and because we do intersession and fall and spring break, there's not a lot of time for PD in the middle of the year in order for us to maintain this schedule. We are falling in the timeline of when the state wants us to start. And so we've gotten we haven't had any issues with feedback, so it's almost a replica. We have not built in summer school for next summer, and we won't add that in until if and when we get funding for that.
Does anyone have any specific concerns about the calendar, or shall we move forward on the approval? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, great. Are there any other voting? Have we done?
School board meeting.
The school board handbook.
Oh, okay, let's skip to that, and then we're gonna go backwards to where we were before, just in case. All right, so I did not have any specific concerns about the handbook. Did anyone else, have any concerns?
No, just some wording, no, just grammar, revisiting some
So
things.
this came about, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. This came about through the Charter Growth Fund and the realization that we don't have an operational handbook for the board. And we don't have any built-in succession plans, not only for the board, but for the CEO. And it's important to have stated in policy. And I talked to several different leaders at the conference. They shared with me their handbooks, and I kind of picked and pulled out the pieces that were really relative to us and tried to tailor it to us and our organization. And so that's why I'm presenting it to you.
On the facilities committee, and I don't know if you wanna add this or not, but as I was reading all of this, would things like rentals fall under that committee? Would you want that to writing policies and procedures for rentals fall under that committee?
I mean, you guys approved our policy on rentals. We brought that to the board when we changed it. We changed the price on rentals, so I don't know if that needs to go back in. That person can always help evaluate us, people that come in or that request to rent. And I can always also bring those requests for rentals to the whole board or to the individual over that committee, and then they can sort of.
That's kind of what I was
figure it out.
thinking, to like make sure if there were any policy changes that needed, that would be vetted by that committee first.
I think
If there
that's
were-
great. I think it's great.
Or if you want somebody to kind of, is this mission aligned? Are we treating everyone that we're in the rental program the same, that kind of thing? It might sit in that committee well.
I think it's a great idea. We'll add that in there.
The other one I have is the development committee, not that this one needs any more
Yes.
things. I had a couple of additions of wording, just monitors and reports on one of those bullets. The progress towards the annual fulfillment of the fundraising goals, just so that after this committee meets, we're getting a full board report on, like, the full board doesn't need to be involved in all of this, but, that we're getting a report,
Yeah.
either in writing or presentation on those goals. The next one, partners with school leadership to make sure the board is aware of the school's specific fundraising needs. Also, what should go through this committee is probably the goals and processes too, just so that we're vetting that. What we have to be really careful with in advancement, and then I added approves fundraising requests, and I'm not sure if you want that to sit here. But as we develop and grow our advancement program or development, whichever one we're calling it, we have to be really careful that we're not cannibalizing. That's one of the biggest issues with advancement. And so this committee or somebody needs to have oversight about all of the pieces. So Space Camp, for example, is a really fundamental program to our elementary school that needs a lot of fundraising. But there needs to be some oversight on how that's being done, because I see where individual families are fundraising because they say, we absolutely cannot afford Space Camp, but our kid wants to go. And so we're working really hard on the weekends, like, to earn all of this money and to fundraise, and they're using Arkansas Arts Academy name in this process, which is usually okay, but you never know like what they're doing and what they're out in the community. But also then, you know, we mentioned, well, we have some people working really hard to be able to provide scholarships. Well, this family just worked really hard to raise their own money. Not to say that we shouldn't do scholarships,
Right.
but there needs to be equity
Yeah.
in that fundraising process
I think
and
that's a
oversight.
great dialogue to have in that committee. And
So,
I think with the principals involved, that's why almost all these committees involve myself and an administrator. So the dialogue, it remains active about the purpose and goes back to the mission. And then when the committees report out, you will have touched, the board will have touched all of these different areas. And I think that's an important piece that we continue to navigate.
so I would probably add another couple of bullet points about kind of some sort of approval oversight process. 'Cause not to say that like whatever it is, dance or instruments or whatever, couldn't also do fundraising. We don't want to be like, we're only letting space fundraise. But there needs to be a calendar, there needs to be oversight. We can't have 5 programs fundraising at the same time that us as a board is trying to do an annual fundraiser, right? So we have an annual fundraising goal that's operational and has nothing to do with the specific programs, but then there's all these, there needs to be a calendar, planning, oversight, and I think that probably sits in this committee as well.
I agree, and we have been having similar conversations with our parent organizations on how do we collaborate in a sense that we all are on the same page and we're not overreaching to our parents. So I think that's a great dialogue to have in this.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's add that in too, that they work alongside the PTO and.
TSA. No, I think I think that conversation will be welcomed by everybody.
Because we also have the foundation fundraising, and so we gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Who all we have in the community asking, how many times we're asking our parents and what for, that sort of thing. I don't know if you panicked when you read the board leadership bullets.
No.
But this is a lot of bullets,
Yes.
under board leadership. So they're all really good. I'm just not sure if we need to spread some of them out to like every board member is gonna do a few of these things. But maybe not. I would change school leader to
and I think-
superintendent.
On that same thought, it could be that whoever the board is, delegates
Yes.
at the preview. And we
We
can
might
put that
say
in
that.
there at the preview of the board. President can delegate.
This is a lot of stuff for one person.
And it does go on to say, right, that the vice supports all of this. So I like the wording of this one, because basically it's like, you also do all these things. So it is both of them. But yeah, maybe some more language about.
Or less language.
Well, about sharing these roles or something. Yeah, this just feels like a lot. Like maybe we relook at that one. And then probably just for future, you probably also need the treasurer on here, because there are some specific, right, like you have to be willing to sign your name to all the bank papers.
That's a good
and
one.
your name is on all the checks without you seeing them, and like there's some
Yeah, that's true,
things
that's
that
true. We can add.
fall under that one that you're kind of taking on. So I would add, please don't add 45 bullet points, but I would add that position in just because there's a few unique things about that one, other than just chairing the finance committee.
In the board member succession area, I just had, I guess, a suggestion for when we're considering board replacement, for it to be strategic according to the needs of the board. So if there's some type of process to sort of like define the gaps prior to selecting, looking actively for a person. Sort of like, do we need someone who has a legal expertise, financial expertise? Sort of like, so we're strategically replacing board members and let that sort of be.
Yeah, that's a good addition. I'm so glad you said that because Cynthia sent me a text and I told her I would share it with you. She says, for the director's handbook, I think it's helpful and appreciate all the hard work that went into it. I would like to see some language included that speaks to parent alumni representation on the board. I 100% agree that a skill needs-based selection protocol is vital, but also value true stakeholder and constituent feedback. I think it's a lot like, look, a lot of different things, ex officio member specifically represented by a position. I was also wondering if we expressly call attention to if an employee of any kind can be a member of the school board. I'm sure there are pros and cons to either option, but wanted to ask. So
Obviously, we've had a pretty hard and fast rule that you can't be on the school board.
yeah, and I told her that's not
It's
a
not
state
an option.
option. Yeah, it's not an option. So, and then I did tell her, and I will share this with you guys, I spoke with our contact with Charter C, her name is Mabel, and she's the direct one that I talked with. And I told her I was presenting this to the board and, you know, how, what a milestone this was for us to have something in writing. And she informed me that we are the only charter school in their entire national cohort that has a board that consists of parents. And so I think the point, it's not that we don't want parents involved, but the intentionality of the positions of the board and what we need to have the board do is almost as important. And I think there's crossover, like all of you have a crossover connection. So it's not like we're excluding someone by any means, but all of you represent a certain point or facet that is needed. So I think, I don't know if it's in this language, I didn't read it as that we were excluding the concept of a parent. I think that remains still an option, but first and foremost, we have to be mission driven.
I think it's dangerous and it's, as we've grown, like it's been hard, right, to have that hard and fast rule that you have to be. That very severely limits the growth potential.
Yes.
Not to say that we can't have a full board of parents, you can, but
Yes.
limiting it that way seems
Well, and you know,
archaic.
we, as a board, you guys have taken really big steps from the very beginning of where the board makeup was before and really begin thinking broader about the benefit of the mission of the charter. So, and it's been a mind shift also for the community. This was a new switch. We had to refer to bylaws. We had to refer to charter policies on what other charters are doing that makes the organization grow. So I don't want to be exclusive, but I also know that when I look around and hear other charters speak, they purposefully crafted a guidelines that help their organization.
Or we adopt and edit or edit and adopt? Because as an incoming board member, I would have liked to have had this. I would have liked to have known what I'm signing up for as it relates to our charter school, not just the training that we receive, right? What does it mean here? I would have liked to have had this. No, adopt and edit or edit and adopt? That's my question.
I would say this is not ready for final approval, but that's my opinion. Anybody else?
I would agree because I think that I would also like to sort of define retreats as well, in terms of them being a necessity. I love that the onboarding is there and that I think which you're that would have been helpful for any of us. But I also think the retreats are very helpful, but they don't happen until January. And I think collaboratively, they help us sort of understand what the mission or goals are ahead of the school year. together so that we can sort of operate more uniformly. So I think a retreat needs to be on there, and it needs to be sort of like defined what's overall happens.
Well, to do the work.
Yes.
It's a very time consuming to sit here and do the work. Now, we are bound legally, right, to do a lot of things
Yeah.
at this table, but a lot of it too can just be the nitty gritty work can be done
Yeah, and
and
there's
then
some,
presented.
I thought we had retreat in there, but I'll go back in and add that. And right now, we try to do 2 a year. We can always increase that number depending on what you guys want.
I think it probably has to do with what are our projects we're working on. I think the committees are gonna help a lot because a lot of work can be done there. And then, this is the forum for kind of reporting and final discussion,
Yes.
hashing out anything that is still outstanding.
Yes, but I definitely think with the definition of the committees, a retreat in advance of that, so we can just sort of gain our mission all together. And then we sort of disperse into our committees and.
Yeah, that's great. Let me work on the edits.
Okay.
I'll send back out to you guys in advance and then we'll put it back on the agenda for December if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the big discussion points,
Yeah,
correct?
you don't need a vote on cell phone policy, right?
Okay. All right, so we're gonna back up to Jamie and the Atlas testing update.
I'm just kicking this off, so I'm giving you the 5,000-foot overview here, and then Ms. Price and Ms. Carruthers are going to give you the more detailed, how is that affecting their specific campuses. So I also gave you 2 slides that I added in since I originally submitted the link to Susan. So Atlas is our new testing platform. This is the platform put out by the state. Atlas is the acronym Arkansas Teaching, Learning, and Assessment System, and it incorporates many things, not just the testing platform, but also the curriculum and the standards. And Arkansas has put a lot of work into this and is very, very proud of it. And it is tailored specifically to Arkansas students. It's been created with input from teachers and parents, and it's not built by a third party. So I've got the slide that shows you the different branches. You've got the K3, the 310. This is what we typically think of as our assessment system. K3, it follows kind of its own system, but it also builds into the 310. K3 does the beginning of the year screeners because we need that point that teachers know exactly where a student is starting from. So the beginning of the year screener has to be done within the first 30 days. That said,
Results.
yes, you need those results. You don't want to wait till January. That said, Arkansas is building this Atlas plane as they're flying it. So we are working out the bugs and things like that this year. They found some big discrepancies in what they expected in the screeners and how they actually played out, especially the literacy screener. So they have already went back and revised some of that, but it's still very good. It's a lot better than where we were. So based off of those screeners, and those are for K3, third grade is only literacy and it's only the beginning of the year. But K2 is literacy and math, and those are beginning, mid, and end of the year. So those screeners tell us where those kiddos are starting at. They also help prepare the teachers with what they're calling testlets, because those are kind of like skill gaps. We want to try to correct those gaps before they get much older, for literacy and math. And then we also develop independent reading plans or individualized reading plans and individualized math plans based on those score results in K through 8th grade. And those are meant to target those needs that need that intervention and need to grow before they move on to the next grade level, or, so that we don't just keep passing on those skill gaps. There's also the K2 summative in math and literacy, which is similar to the 310, just content specific. And then those diagnostic testlets I talked about. The 310 general is when you think of end of the year testing, this is what everybody's thinking of. And it's been, since I started teaching in the early 2000s, I think this is my 5th iteration of an end-of-year summative in Arkansas. And this is only the 2nd one that Arkansas built themselves. So I really like that it's homegrown, built from Arkansas teachers, built based on Arkansas standards, which is all fabulous. I'll talk about the summatives in just a second. That bottom optional, we as a district have chosen to do the interims. We replaced our iReady with interims this year, and I think that was a very great move because we're keeping with a consistent testing platform. Students are going to see the same format of questions, the same content, all of those things in their fall interims, their winter interims, and their end of the year, April, May summatives. And we also get so much more data than we did with the iReady. So optional for everybody else, but it's not for us because we're using it. And classroom tools are something that teachers can choose to use in their classrooms to use these types of questions throughout the year, not just during those interim periods. In the middle is alternate. DLM stands for Dynamic Learning Maps. Traditionally, we've not had any students that have been at that cognitive level. These are for our lowest cognitive learners, but I believe that may be changing soon. And then college and career, these are primarily the high school tests. These 3 tests are not made by Arkansas. We're still contracting with College Board and ACT to do these tests. But these are, we can't really grow our own because this is what colleges are expecting. But all of Atlas has been geared to prepare them for those college and career readiness. And then other is just some of these other tests that might come in. ELPA 21, that's for our English language learners. We have those every year in March, and then there's screeners at the beginning of the year. Civics is a requirement for graduation, and we are doing that at the high school in our civics classes. And then NAEP is its own entity. We were a NAEP school last year, but it doesn't really benefit us. We don't get anything out of it. The NAEP, the nationwide assessment platform, they just use our students and test them in 4th and 8th grade. And they send us very nice thank you cards. But we were a NAEP school last year. So the next screener talks about when we have chosen to do these screeners, or do these tests at Arkansas Arts Academy. September was the K-3 screeners. And ours went very well. They went, we learned a literacy screener that we thought was going to be 20 minutes was multiple hours. And that was not just Arkansas Arts Academy, that was across the board. That's one of those bugs they're working out. October, we did the ACT work keys for 10 through 12 and the PSAT, and that's what your extra slides relate to. I got those scores after I had already given this presentation to Susan, so I want to talk about those just briefly. November is the fall ACT interims. The state wanted K2 interims to be December, but they have pushed those to only February this year because they were not prepared based on the K3 screeners we did before and trying to roll out the testlets. DESE moved that for everybody, so there'll only be one K2 interim, and that'll be in February. And then February is also when we do the 2nd round, what we call the winter ACT interims. March is ELPA, and the juniors take the ACT. And then April are all of our Atlas summatives and AP testing. April and May get a little bit hairy. So those extra slides I gave you, the PSAT is paid for by the state for all 10th graders, and then 11th graders can choose to take it if they pay for it themselves. The state doesn't pay for them to take it again in 11th grade. We have not offered the PSAT in 2 years. This has been our first year. So our 11th graders, this was their first time taking it. And we had 7 of them sign up to do it, and they did well. Our 10th graders, we had 57 take it, and they did amazing, especially for not really having any, last minute preparation or anything like that. If you look at the scores, I put the scores for our 10th graders in your blue column. I intended to change that to green and didn't get to it. The public schools of Arkansas are in red, and you can look in every single category. The total reading, writing subset and math subset, Arkansas Arts Academy exceeded the state public school averages. And I also did the yellow, which is nationwide, and green, which is global. because Arts Academy also exceeded both of those in their total scores and in the reading and writing. The US testers and the global testers got a little bit ahead of us in math, but it's still very, very close. And that is how well our students did is a testament to them and to our teachers. Also, ACT work keys. This is the first time we've offered work keys, maybe ever, but there may have been one other year we did it. This is an optional assessment that students can choose to take, and it's for workplace readiness. The state pays for students to take it once between their 10th and 12th grade years. We had 15 students choose to take it. I think there was one 10th grader and the rest were 11th and 12th. They take 3 assessments: applied math, graphic literacy, and workplace documents. And those assessments are then combined to determine kind of their workplace readiness. 12 of our 15 students earned certificates for workplace readiness. 2 of them earned bronze, 3 of them earned silver, 4 earned gold, and 3 earned platinum. And that is a huge accomplishment because these students didn't know what they were stepping into with this test. And there are certificates for those. I don't want to steal Sherry's thunder because I think she's going to do an assembly as to who won those different levels. But that is amazing that first round our students were that successful. So going back to Atlas in general, it's a comprehensive system. It takes the standards that they have been working on for many years, the curriculum and pacing guides, which they kind of call blueprints that they put out there, and the assessment data, and put it all together into this system that monitors kids from kindergarten through 10th grade. When you get to 11th and 12th, they're looking more at ACT and SAT. I love that it was developed with Arkansas teachers in mind. This was not a third party out of state. They had lots of meetings with many stakeholders, and I love that they had teachers from all the districts come and participate in creating the content, developing where the performance bands were, and all of those things. And this is actually aligned to Arkansas academic standards. My next slide shows you the difference between ACT Aspire, what we had been doing up until last year, and Atlas. And Aspire wasn't aligned to Arkansas state standards. This is a new baseline for Arkansas because last year was the first year that we gave the Atlas summative, and you can't compare Atlas and ACT Aspire. It's apples and oranges. Their performance descriptors are different. The content, the standards they're testing on is different. So you can kind of look at percentages of mastery, but you really can't say, oh, our students grew this much from the beginning of the year, or the year before, excuse me. Okay. So ACT Aspire was aligned to ACT college and career readiness, not to Arkansas state standards, which is, great if you're going to take the ACT in 11th grade, but not so great if you're in K through 10. So it's great that Atlas does align to what our teachers are teaching in the classroom. ACT Aspire cut levels were set statistically, meaning they created bands, more of a bell curve. They created bands that said this many students will fall into basic and this many students will fall into close and ready. Well, Atlas doesn't do that. They make their cut scores based on what the students can demonstrate, more like standards-based mastery. So theoretically, every student could be a level 3 or 4, they could be excelling, which I think is much better than setting it by statistics. And then ACT Aspire predicted how well students would do on the ACT. Well, the Atlas predicts how well they're doing on the standards that we say are important for them to learn for college. The assessment data, both summative and interim, this gives us a systems check. And what another great thing about using the Atlas interims is it gives us a system check throughout the year. We found out there was almost nothing out from DESE about interims, so we were learning as we go the last 2 weeks. But we found out that the interims are essentially summative tests given throughout the year. So there's many things on them that students didn't know, which made a lot of our students very nervous. But that's okay because it's going to show them how much more they know in February and how much more they know in April. It allows teachers to see where they might need to spend more time on the curriculum or things that they may need to make sure that they review. It also offers a cohort view, meaning you can look at students' progress based on other peers of their same age, but you can look at it in comparing that student just to themselves and how much they're growing individually, which is fantastic. Any questions so far?
Do you anticipate that this is going to last?
I
know that's probably not a question you can answer, but
I know that Dr. Roberts may know more having worked under this, but I believe with the amount of money they've invested in this, it's going to last a while. And we saw them changing the frameworks, the standards, starting 5-6 years ago. I think they started with English. I think they've been planning for this all along. Now, we're saying it came out of Learns, but it didn't start just with Learns. I think it started before that. So yes, I think it will last. Whether that's 5 years or 10 years, I don't know. But this is the best system that I've seen, from Benchmark to Park to Aspire. I missed something in their Star, I think. I really like it. And I love the teacher side of me loves the data that you can mine out of this. It doesn't just say arbitrarily, your kid is close to mastery. It breaks it down by the categorical domains that you teach in each subject. And it breaks it down even farther to the standards. So I can look and see how my daughter or my students are doing on a specific English standard or specific math standard. Instead of just saying, you're not on grade level in math, I can look and see you're struggling in algebra. Let's see if we can remediate some algebra and then see what that does, sort of
our
thing.
parents have access to.
They do. We had a parent engagement night tonight. The family portal codes have went out. I hope that parent-teacher conferences are able to discuss this in particular. We didn't have them in the September parent-teacher conferences. The data hadn't come out, but hopefully in February, this is something teachers can explore in depth with their students. But yes, the Atlas portal gives you real-time data. The interims that we did last week and even today, it's in the Atlas portal for parents to see. So the next couple of slides give you just a general overview of what these tests cover. It's very general because it's different for each grade level, but the domains, the big categories of what's covered are the same. Within those domains, they're going to do grade level content. The vocabulary you learn as a third grader is not the same vocabulary you learn as a ninth grader, for instance, but they're still both learning vocabulary. So these, the next 4 slides talking about E3, ELA, math, and science, these are both summative and interim, and we didn't know that until last week. ELA has 2 tests. So in order to get an ELA score report, the student has to have taken the reading and language test and the writing test. We're seeing that right now with the high school 7th through 10th grade take writing tomorrow. So they took reading last week, but they can't see their ELA score yet because they have to have that writing. So the ELA test, reading and language has 40 to 42 items, and writing has 1 item. Aspire, the writing, they would tell you what grade, what type of writing it was. So naturally, teachers would teach that one type of writing more. But now it can be any of those types in any grade level. It can be expository, narrative, argumentative. You get the same luck of the draw. And these tests have 4 domains. They test reading fundamentals and vocabulary, literary text, which is more the fiction, informational text, which traditionally is a more difficult area for students across the board, and then writing and language. And I love the data that comes out of these. I didn't dig into it here, but it's amazing how much you can mine out of that. I'm a data nerd and I like it. Math, grades 3, 4, and 5, they have 35 test items, and they cover the domains of number and place value, computation and algebraic reasoning. Students don't know in 3rd grade they're doing algebra, but they're preparing those foundational skills. And they also do geometry measurement and data analysis. 6, 7, and 8 are similar but a little bit different, still 35 test items. Numbers and concepts, computations, proportional relationships in algebra, and then geometry and measurements, and now we're adding in some statistics and probability. Another thing about the Atlas testing is this isn't, I mean, it's not all multiple choice. One, it's adaptive. So as students are taking the test, if they start to miss a whole lot of questions, if they're too difficult, the test is gonna kind of lower. It's gonna maybe go down a grade level or get a little easier with the question difficulty until the student starts getting it right, and then it'll go up again. That's brand new. We haven't seen that. I don't know. I can't recall that we've seen that in the summative platform. And I had another thought and then it left me. Oh, and the tests are also application based. So we're not looking at just recall or independent scenarios. You know, it's more of how does this apply to real life situations, which is great also. So students, they don't just pick A, B, C, or D. They have to sometimes explain why in writing, or they have to explain their reasoning for how they got to their answer or something of that nature. Math also, I gave you 3 through 8. Well, after you get through 8th grade, then the tests become, in math and science, they become end of course based. So algebra, which is traditionally 9th grade, but if you take algebra as an 8th grader, you're going to take the algebra test. So you have algebra and then geometry, which is typically 9th and 10th grade, but not always. And I'll let you read those just in the keeping to time here. Science has grades or tests 3 through 8. They test in 4 domains: physical science, life science, earth and space, engineering, technology, and then applying science. These questions are in clusters, so they might give the students a research study or a graph and then ask them a series of questions about that particular topic. And then there is not a 9th grade science test, which made our 9th graders very happy today. But there is a biology end of course exam. The next slide is really important. This is how they evaluate or assess on all of the Atlas exams, whether it's interims, summatives, what have you. There's 4 levels. So the bottom level is level 1. If a student scores in the level 1, then they do not have mastery of the content or the grade level content. Level 1 is cause for concern because we need to do some remediation very quickly. We need to target what needs help. I'm going to skip 2 and 3 for just a second. Level 4 is above grade level content. These students can do your grade level work. They can do the hard work consistently. They're ready for more. 2 and 3, if you notice, they're both shades of green. That dotted line in the middle, imagine that's the number 1060. 1060 is your magic cutoff number that you have mastered grade level content. So the bottom of level 3 is 1060. But just because you're not at that magical number doesn't mean you're not ready for grade level material. This level 2, Jerry calls this the dig deeper level, and I think that's the perfect name for level 2. These students can do grade level work. They understand what's going on. They just may not do it consistently. They might have trouble with the difficult questions, or they may have trouble with one skill. So these are your dig deeper. They don't necessarily need full-on intervention, but we need to dig deeper and target what could be holding them back from going to that level 3 of mastery. So I like that there's that differentiation right there. And then I want to share just some general statistics with you before Jerry and Rachel talk about more specific grade level and improvement plan things. I told you that you can't compare ACT, Aspire, and Atlas, but I did include the Aspire data from 22-23 just to give you some context. You got to take it with a grain of salt. I translated them to the 1 through 4 performance descriptors, like the mastery levels, but we're talking about different test questions, different cutoff levels. It's just there for context. If you look at the last two columns, there's elementary school is the graph on the left, high school is the graph on the right, and we're looking at English language arts first. Atlas, 3rd through 6th grade students, little bit over 54% scored mastery of grade level content, the green and the blue. That's compared to a little bit shy of 36% from the state. So 18% higher for Arts Academy at the elementary and ELA on Atlas last year, which that's great. We want to see that. We want to see that we're better than the state. But then you also look at those numbers below and see we've still got some room to grow. We have 29% of kids that just need that little bump to get them up to that level 3. And then we have about 17% of kids that we need to do some intervention on. And then the high school numbers, 59% of the students are level 3 and above. They have mastery of grade level content. And this is compared to 32% at the state level. We almost doubled the state in mastery level at the 7th through 10th grade at the high school. And I really like how small that level 1 number is right there. Just slightly more than 8% of students in 7th through 10th grade are in that level 1 phase. But that still means that we've got 8% of students that we need to really help them and dig deep for them. On math is lower for Arts Academy than English language arts is. And that is true not just for us, but for the state and the nation. To some degree, it probably is COVID related, but math has always been a little bit more difficult. But still, we are keeping pace, if not excelling, with the state of Arkansas. So the elementary school, 37%, 37.25, had mastery level 3 or level 4 versus the state at 37.75. So we're almost equal with them elementary level. The high school is beating the state in math. 51% is level 3 or 4, and then versus slightly less than 28%. So we almost doubled them there as well. And then science, our science teachers are rocking it because our science scores look amazing at the elementary and the high school. Atlas 3 through 6, just slightly less than 57% have grade level mastery or above versus 35% at the state. And then high school, 60% have mastery or above versus 35% at the state. So we are about 25% higher than the state level. And the final slide that I want to show you is how we compare to local school districts. It's great to compare to Arkansas, but we all know that Northwest Arkansas is a little bit of an anomaly in the bubble that we live in. This chart here was actually crafted by Dr. Roberts, but it has so much great information in it. It looks at that percentage of grade level above, and this is 3 through 10. This is elementary and high school. But it factors in these other elements that can influence our scores. District free and reduced lunch levels. If students are coming to school with not having eaten at home or having socioeconomic influences, that impacts their learning level. District English language learner percentage, as well as the district level SPED. So Arkansas Arts Academy is highlighted up there at the top. I want you to look at, well, you can see the enrollment numbers too, to give you a gauge of our enrollment. The closest ones that we are to are Haas Hall, Pea Ridge, and Gravette. Looking at math, which we know is our lower area, we are approximately equal to Rogers, and we are higher than Springdale, and we're approximately equal to Gravette as well. Looking at ELA, we exceed every other district except Haas Hall in our ELA mastery at or above grade level. And then science, we exceed every other district except for Bentonville, and it's very close there. And then Haas Hall. So Haas Hall is beating us, but let's look at their free and reduced lunch level. We have almost 5 times more free and reduced lunch students than they do. We have 10 times more special education students compared to their 0. And then English language learners, it's close, but we still have almost twice as many, 5 to 9%. So you can look at those levels down the board. But we have twice as many free and reduced lunch as Bentonville. We have more free and reduced lunch than Pea Ridge and are approximately equal to Gravette. English language learners, we have more than Bentonville, more than Haas, more than Pea Ridge, and more than Gravette. And then our special education, we are almost equal to Bentonville, 10 times more than Haas Hall, literally. And we are close to Rogers, we're close to Pea Ridge, and we are almost equivalent to Springdale. So we know if I was a parent looking at where the best place to send my child would be, Arkansas Arts Academy is obviously the best choice for arts, but we are also an excellent choice for academics and rigor in a small school environment and all of the positive things that we offer that the big districts can't. Any questions for me? I just threw a lot of stuff at you at 8 o'clock at night.
Colleagues might cover it,
Okay.
but
I will be here if you have a question.
how are our teachers expected to use this data? Or is it just an administrator the
We have already met with teachers about how they get into Atlas reporting, how we've met with them to compare the school district data, much of the same stuff that we've shown you. We've already met with teachers in their professional learning communities, their PLC groups. They are going to talk to you, I know Jerry specifically, and probably Rachel too, are going to talk to you about how they're looking at how this data impacts their curriculum, how it impacts their instructional materials. I don't want to steal their thunder. So they are expected to use it, and we are already putting those tools into their hands.
Okay, so I've got some slides that did not get to because I have some data in there from today, like this week, Michael has. So one of the first things that I did want to say before, just take a little break from Atlas for a half minute. I want to talk about some of our events. Our fourth grade, I talked about it earlier in the year, but our fourth grade is our performance year now. And could you go 2 slides ahead? It's our performance year, and so the kids have been working on We Honor the Brave performance that they presented for Veterans Day, and they did an incredible job. I don't know that I saw any of you there, but it was really impressive. The kids were acting, they were singing, they were dancing, there was choreography, there was artwork behind them that kids had done also, and they just did a fantastic job. And then they're having an encore performance at our Jamboree. That is this Friday. And if you want to come and see, if you want to put your boots on and put your cowboy hats on and come and, see some dancing and dance with some kids afterwards, we're having pretty much all day Jamboree on Friday. You can go ahead. Another really amazing thing that we have going on right now is every one of our grade levels has started Unit 2 for Artful Learning. And this is the first time that they've been teaching this unit. We've only taught Unit 4 last year, so this is our first go at Unit 2. And they're all doing really amazing things, and this is one of the amazing things that's going on in the building. Our first graders are studying Yayoi Kusama, who has the mirror room at Crystal Bridges, and she also has done something called an obliteration room. And so our first grade team and Miss Bowis worked really hard to create an amazing masterwork experience for our kids. Because they are working on connection as their concept, and they're studying Yayoi as a masterwork that does exemplify connection. So one of the things that they worked on is they took a space in our building and they made it completely white. Everything, floor, walls, everything white. You can see some stuff on the right there. You can't see all of it. There's a lot of children in there, but everything in it. There's chairs, there's a rocking horse, there's Legos, there's everything in there is all white. And Yayoi did one of these at, I don't know which museum, but a really famous one. And she had the white room and people from the public came in and they put dots on it. And so they talk about how the dots connect to their connection concept. So our kids have been going into the room class by class. Our first graders got to be the first classes of kids But right there, those are some kids that were exemplifying all of our herd behaviors and were just being amazing in class, and they got an extra ticket to visit the obliteration room. And we would like to invite you guys to come to the obliteration room next month. I believe we're inviting you guys to come have the school board meeting at our building, and we would like for you guys to be able to take part in the obliteration room. Katie Bowis is reporting it every single time that people go in. She's going to end up with a kind of sped up version of the entire obliteration room being covered with dots. But we were excited to have an installation type piece in our building. That's another type of art that we want our kids to experience, is being part of an installation and seeing that. So now I'll get into all the data, and I'll go kind of fast, and y'all can dig in and look through it, but stop me if you want. So Jamie already talked about this, so we can go past this one. So this is our breakdown by grade level. So math, we know, is our the section we need to work on the most. But you can see each grade level, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th here. Every one of our grade levels beat the state. 4th grade did not, but we are definitely looking at all of the data. Our teachers have reviewed the data already, and they've been looking at student level data as well to compare that to how kids are doing in the classroom right now and how they've been doing on their interims and their common formative assessments that they have been giving.
I just asked.
Yes, ma'am.
How does the 4th grade math data from last year match the 5th grade data now with the Atlas? Like, is it showing that these students are?
So it's hard to compare because ACT Aspire and Atlas, like it's.
So I'm just wondering if now having a test based on our Arkansas standards, are those students doing better?
The students, the numbers look a little bit lower than ACT Aspire, I feel like overall, but we don't really have a lot of information about what the numbers mean. They tell us what the levels meant, but we need to have a full year go around, and then we need to see the next summative data to really be able to tell how much of an impact that really is having on their understanding in the classroom. Because I just, with Benchmark and with ACT Aspire, we could say, okay, if a kid's here, we know that they're going to be doing and knowing these things in the classroom, and we're just not quite there yet with this data. But we are absolutely looking through it and comparing it to all of our new data to kind of build that knowledge about our kids. So our ELA data, we outscored the state in every category, and quite a bit. We did a really great job in each grade level. That's definitely a strength of ours. And then in science, we absolutely outscored. And I think there are a couple of reasons for our just outstanding science scores. One thing is I think that we have the most experience in doing arts integration with science and social studies. Those are our two big areas that are a lot easier to do arts integration with, and they're a lot more hands-on. Another reason is our teachers teach a lot of science, and in other elementary schools that doesn't necessarily happen. There's a lot of literacy in math, and science is pushed off a little bit to the side more than we do at our school, and our teachers do a fantastic job of integrating literacy with science as well, which I think has helped our literacy scores quite a bit. So some of the responses that we've been making to our scores, we know too that with artful learning, the data that we receive from our summative tests is going to be a trailing indicator. So we'll be getting that data will be rising after we've had our implementation of artful learning. So we know that we're in a little bit of an implementation dip, but we're seeing that we're already starting to come out of that. We also began instructional rounds. We actually already completed our first set. And in instructional rounds, every single one of our teachers in our building, even our secretary, our nurse, our counselor, everybody, our OT, they all visited other teachers' classrooms. And when they visited those classrooms, they were looking for things that informed their practice, things that they did in their own classroom, and then things they were wondering about that they saw our other teachers teach. We intentionally scheduled teachers to be in teams that were not their grade levels as much as possible to mix people up so that we weren't talking about the content, we were talking about the instructional strategies happening in the classroom. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful to hear the reflections of the teachers afterwards and the things that they saw, and also the valuing of their colleagues and the amazing things that are happening in all of our classrooms. Because they just don't get to see it. They can talk to each other, but talking to someone and seeing them teach in their expertise is something completely different. So we had wonderful feedback about that, and that really should help our Tier 1 instruction grow because they're getting strategies immediately that they can put into play in their classrooms. We also already had a first round of math-specific PD, since we know that that is a growing area for us. On October 23rd, we had 9 teachers who volunteered to come in on a fall break day They were not contracted. We had second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade teachers represented, and we had some support staff as well. Some of our paraprofessionals came. And we did a whole day of kind of a smattering of all different kinds of pieces that we can immediately add into our classroom to up the rigor in mathematics. So having conversations about math, incorporating number talks and different number routines and structured student talks to deepen the level of math that we have happening in our classrooms. We're going to continue that with coaching support and with other PDs built in throughout the year. We also are working with the Bailey Group. The Bailey Group is through the ADE, the high quality instructional grant. So we're part of this cohort group, and we are going to be receiving some support from, there's a woman called Feather Lynn that I'm meeting with now, who will be working with us to further math instruction. She's going to be in our building for multiple days. She's going to observe, we're going to review data. She's going to work directly with teachers to help really increase our math even further. Also in the Bailey group, there's a former superintendent and former principal who's actually going to be coaching me specifically, so that he's going to be going through things with me and helping me grow too, because I believe every teacher deserves a coach, and I believe every person deserves a coach. Like I want to get better with him, and he's going to help me specifically work on some of our math. I told him math is absolutely something that I want to work on too. Go ahead. So some of the things that our Tier 1 instructional support, Miss Rosanna has been working on impact cycles. She has 8 teachers that are currently involved in a coaching cycle, and you can see all the different topics that they're going over there. Those are teacher-led topics, so the teachers decide what they really want to work on in their practice, and that makes it a lot more impactful because they care a lot about it. They're very invested, and they can really kind of grow in their profession in the ways that they feel like they need. There's also a lot of co-planning that Miss Rosanna is doing with our teachers, and a lot of PGP support as well. And then this is just a little bit more information about our instructional rounds. We had 7 teachers that hosted observers, which, being a host to observers, it's different when maybe 1 or 2 people come in and maybe it's me or Dr. McGar. But when you have like 5 or 6 of your peers come in, that's a whole nother level of stress. And so we had 7 teachers who voluntarily allowed for teachers to come in for 2 days to their classrooms. Every teacher observed 2 different host teachers. Miss Rosanna, Miss Bowis led the groups because it's really important to me that it does not feel evaluative to the teacher in any way, shape, or form. So Dr. McGar and I did not lead groups since we're their evaluators. We wanted it to feel very collaborative, and we wanted for everyone also to feel open in giving any opinions or questions that they had to the teacher in the feedback. They shared feedback that they had with the hosts, and we got such positive feedback, and people want to do it again. And we're hoping to have more hosts and different people hosting. Eventually, the idea of instructional rounds is that it will become a way that we do school. It'll be part of our culture, where someone might just come into the classroom and say, Dr. Roberts, I want to see what you're doing today, so I'm just going to come in and I'm going to observe with that same framework, where it just becomes part of the way that people are always welcome in other people's classrooms. So that's a little down the line. So these are our interims. So we have been taking them. We are not finished with them. We are still doing makeups and still working on a couple of other tests we need to give. But this is kind of preliminary data. Our teachers have already been looking at it. It's also, like Ms. Dale said, already available on the Atlas portal for families. But this shows us, so that it's the same coloring that they use for the summative, and it shows us where our different grade levels are. I would like to point out that 4th grade was our lowest in our summative data previously, but we have these are different kids than them, but we do have, they had some really good results. These scores, though, are showing how much of the material, the grade level material, they have mastered from the entire year. And we only have a quarter of the year done. So this is, if they took the summative tomorrow, kind of a prediction of where they might be. So we'll see growth from this throughout the year. Go ahead. These are our science interims, which look amazing. Or, like I said earlier, our science scores are great. And our teachers are already digging into the student level data through PLCs. They're looking at, they'll be looking at student information. They'll be comparing them to the common formative assessments they've been giving and use them to inform their instruction in the classrooms. We do not have the ELA yet because the ELA, we've already taken the language arts and reading part of it, but we have to take the writing part as well, and that's a whole essay. And that's terrifying for kids, and we're not going to do it before Thanksgiving. So we're going to wait and make that happen after Thanksgiving. This was our math screener that we had, that we gave to K2, and it doesn't give us a whole lot of information, but it does tell us who might be at risk in a couple of different categories. And so from that screener data, we are looking and organizing all of the testlets, because we have to look at every single kid and the specific pieces that they were at risk in. And then we determine if we feel like they need a testlet, even if it says at risk. If they're like at risk but close to being okay, we may not decide that they need a testlet because we have classroom data, common formative assessment data that shows that they're okay. But we will track and keep track of every kid and the different parts that they need testlets in. We'll give them those testlets in those specific categories, and then we'll build our intervention around that. I don't have our literacy screener data in here. The state threw out a couple of questions. There was one question that took kids, like kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders, like an hour and a half to do one question. And there were 2 of those. So they threw some of those out. So the data is not particularly accurate yet. And I don't know what exactly that looks like. We do have information to guide us in giving testlets though. And those testlets also will serve as dyslexia screeners for our kids. Go ahead. And that's all that I have. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Well, I am excited to present to you guys tonight and to kind of talk a little bit about some of the successes and where we have work to do at the high school. Just starting with a little bit of an update on some of the events that we've done. Rachel talked about the arts integration, which of course we also do, but at the high school, we become much more focused in the arts as well. And so we've just completed our first theater, production. And so Alice by Heart, I know you guys probably all saw it, was amazing. The kids were able today to perform here for their peers. And so that was a lot of fun and they really enjoyed that. It was really good. And I was extremely proud of the work that the kids did. We have several things coming up even just before the break. So we have the Fall Music Festival coming on December 7th and Tea with Claire, which are pretty big productions. And then of course we have kids participating in the parade and various things still coming up. So a lot going on. And then student success planning and CAP conferences. I wanted to give you a little bit of an update there. And so we're kind of making a few changes. We started today with the freshmen. They were so happy that they did not have an Atlas interim test to take because their 9th grade science was not a test. And then they were very dashed whenever they found out that I had a plan for them to work on their student success plans. And so we introduced that to them today. Kind of working through some of the different things, starting the planning for their classes for next year is really what that student success plan is, ultimately ending with what is my plan after I graduate from high school. And so we'll be rolling out that. We have it all set up and we're ready to roll that out. January is really the start for all grades. Culminating on January 31st, we're going to have an electives fair. That'll happen on January 31st with parent meetings about leading up to that on all the different things that kids can take, and then adding in some of the career and technical programs that the kids have available to them through NWAC and NWTI as well. Also with concurrent credits, all that's coming down the road we're having CAP conferences on February 11th. And so CAP conferences, career and academic planning. And so we're going to bring parents to the table to talk about what classes are being chosen for next year, how we got to that point, why they chose what they chose, sit down with their advisors and just talk about the plan for the coming years and looking at a 4-year plan, looking at it longitudinally a little bit more so than we've done in the past. And so just trying to kind of shore that up a little bit. Concurrent credit, I wanted to give you an update for concurrent credit. We currently have, we have scaled that program tremendously. We have 4 students, I believe, right now signed up for the spring with 56 classes for concurrent credit. And that's just next semester. That doesn't count the current students. And so we have scaled that quite a bit this year. It comes with a little bit of growing pains, but I'm extremely proud of Amber Foster and the work that she's done with the kids, really working toward improving and kind of streamlining those processes. We are not where we need to be yet on that, but we are definitely seeing more kids participating. And so if you think about using the scholarships that are available to them their sophomore, junior, senior year, and then you translate that from those classes and those 56 classes that they're taking next semester and put the amount of money that is saved by parents and families. There is some cost to them. They have to pay for their books at A-State. They go to NWAC. A lot of times they don't have to pay for books, but then there's a charge. It's more expensive than A-State, so it kind of has a charge. It kind of evens out a little bit there. Extremely proud of our kids for working hard and, challenging themselves to do hard things. So pretty excited about concurrent credit and the increase we've had there. We've already talked a little bit about AP, and you saw the tremendous number. I mean, the number of students that are participating there is awesome. So now we want to dig into our Atlas scores. You have these slides with you, and so you can see these comparisons to the state, and that's very similar information to what Rachel presented for hers. We go 7th grade, 8th grade. We'll just look at math for a second. 7th grade, 8th grade, and then it jumps to end of course. And I'm really excited for end of course for algebra and geometry, and then also with biology because of a couple of reasons. It gives a little bit more meaning to the data. It also motivates teachers a lot more whenever what they are teaching is what is being tested. Whenever it was Aspire and we're doing, 9th grade physical science, it was a general science class or test. It wasn't a physical science test. It wasn't a biology test. And so it's kind of hard to get yourself pumped up for a test that doesn't really test exactly what you teach. The other reason I'm excited about that is that it's easier to give accountability to those. Like we're teaching biology, we're being tested on biology. It makes a lot of sense, right? And so in those courses, it's easier to have a higher level of accountability and saying, hey, we have to get better in these areas. The other reason I'm really excited about that, like Jamie said, that they break it down by standards. For most of the tests. Science is a lot more general. It's not quite as helpful, but it's still good. So looking at these are state comparisons. And I'm actually going to skip over this graphic because it's busy for me, and I've got one that I think will be a little bit more meaningful. So we're going to skip forward a couple, and also just for time, you can take a look at those. But if you'll go to the charts. And it should be the next one right there. Okay, so what I did is I went into my school info and pulled some of the data for the high schools in our region. So you saw the data earlier for the districts, and you could see how we compared with the districts. I didn't choose a lot of them just for the busyness of the chart, but I did want to choose Rogers because we're in Rogers, and Bentonville because outside of Haas Hall, they're the highest scoring district in the region. And so I thought those were two good, comparisons for us. And so if we look at our 7th grade scores, you can see at the top, that's our English language arts, then our math, science, reading, and algebra. And so English language arts for the state of Arkansas, we've almost doubled those scores at the high school. And again, I'm extremely proud of these. These aren't my scores. I wasn't here. I didn't do this work. I'm just thankful to be a part of what is going on at Arkansas Arts Academy that is really good. So our students in English language arts, we match the highest other basically public school. I know that Haas Hall is a public school, but if I'm honest, I don't feel like they play by the same set of rules that we play by. So putting that out there. Bentonville plays by the same set of rules that we play by. Rogers, for sure. So what I want to do is kind of just look at those. With grade 7 for math, we are way above the state. We're still catching up with Bentonville. And that's, right now that we're looking at that as kind of a goal setting. And then with science, the scores aren't as high percentage-wise, but you can see that across the state, they're not very high. And I'm going to show you, you're going to see another one where there's a big anomaly in the state level scores on one of the tests, and we'll get to it in a second. But with this, you can see the reading. I feel like a lot of the success at the high school that we have in all areas really kind of goes back to this reading success. So, the state of Arkansas, 32%, 33% of our students in the whole state scored in the 3 or the 4. Okay, this is not 1s and 2s. This is just 3s and 4s, which is proficiency. And so with that, 65% is really, really high. And that's higher than Bentonville. That's way higher than Rogers. And when you look, we're not as high as Haas Hall, but we're approaching that. And so these scores really kind of give you something to compare to that's local. And so we don't have any 7th graders that take Algebra 1, so that's why ours is blank. But I put it in there because I want to go there. I think that next year I hope to see some 7th grade scores in this category. So the next one is 8th grade scores. Again, the ELA. The green represents what I think is a tremendous set of strengths. And so you can see that in math, we are at 58%. We're higher than Bentonville, definitely higher than Rogers for 8th grade mathematics. When you drop down to reading, again, much higher, and kind of really just keeping pace with everybody in the region and doing really well. I want you to look at algebra. What this kind of tells us, this is our 8th graders who are taking Algebra 1, which is typically a 9th grade course. So this is, how do our kids that are advanced by 1 year in mathematics compare to everybody else's kids that are advanced by 1 year in mathematics? Does that make sense? Our advanced kids are just keeping pace. I was excited to see Rogers in that one. Their advanced kids in the 8th grade, their advanced kids are outpacing Bentonville and us. So that's definitely something to look at, but we are very high. Our advanced kids compared to other people's advanced kids, they're doing really well in mathematics at the high school level and also in other areas. We look at geometry. We don't have any 8th graders that took geometry, so we don't have a comparison, point on that. So next we'll look at 9th grade. You're going to see a similar story. You can see all the green shows where we are above the other local districts. We're above the state in every category by far. When we look at 9th graders taking algebra, so that's just our on grade level kids, that's not nearly as high as it needs to be, if we're honest. 43%, it's not as high as it needs to be. But when we look at the state, I look at it and I go, I think there might be a problem with this test. I don't know, but 17% seems of kids that are proficient in Algebra 1 on grade level, because that's on grade level for the whole state. That's a really low number. So I don't know if our slump from COVID is just that bad in mathematics, but it seems to me that there may be some issue with the test. But if you look at us compared to Bentonville, I mean, we're way above. And so we're not where we need to be. And I look at all of these scores and I look at 65%, on grade level, mastery, proficient, however you want to put it, for ELA. And I think that is tremendous when it literally doubled the state average. That's tremendous. And it's all good unless you're in the 36% that's not there. And that's where I want to look. That's where I need to look. This is awesome as long as the last name of the kid in the 36% isn't Price. Does that make sense? And that's kind of how I see it. If these are my kids, then we have work to do. And until we're at 100%, we have work to do. So that's kind of how I presented it to the staff. So we'll go on. You can see with biology, look at biology at the bottom there really quick. I'm really proud of that number. That is a very, very high average. That is high level proficiency. And right now, we took that test today, and I'm not going to dig into the interims, but the interim we're only a quarter of the way through the year and they're already at a 70%. So we're setting the bar high early. 70% of the kids of the year-long test are already proficient. So we're extremely excited to see those science scores come the end of the year. So the next one is 10th grade. And so the anomaly that I want you to look at really closely, you see a lot of good things, but geometry. Geometry looks really low, right? We're 30%. That's too low. That's not okay. However, when you look at the state average is at 11%, something's wrong. Like something's wrong there. It's not just, it's not normal. You don't normally see, you don't normally see averages that low. And we take the just grade 10 overall. You really shouldn't have just a grade 10 mathematics. So I pulled that. I'm not exactly sure. I think what that means is you have some kids that take Algebra 1 in the 10th grade, some that take geometry, and it's the combination of both. And so that's what I think that looks like. But I still haven't, digging into that, I couldn't tell exactly what that data was. So that is kind of where we're at there. So what do we do with that? We're meeting with PLCs. We've already started digging into this data with our PLCs on the student level all the way down. We're looking, the state changed. We've always had to have individualized reading plans K-3, and now we have to have individualized math plans for students who are not on grade level. And so we're looking at that, but they moved those because math is so low, I am assuming 3-8. So we have to have individualized math plans in the 7th and 8th grade at the high school level. So we're working on that. We've already broken down the number of students that need those plans, that we think need those plans. We do have a little bit of adjustment that we're working on because if they're a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 1 automatic needs a math plan. A 2 means dig deeper and look a little bit more at the data, but we will probably go ahead and put all of our 2s on math plans just because out of all of our scores, even though I'm proud of the math scores, we still have a lot of work to do and we have a lot of growth that's needed. So we're working on those. We've broken it down individually. We have those students identified and we're currently working on what the plan is. What's that going to look like come January? And so it looks like they're going to be on the 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade wheel. We're going to put in a rotation for doing foundational math skills. So we're working on that. We're working on our tier 1 instruction with our pacing guides and just comparing them to, the test scores will break down to the standard level. So we're looking at pacing guides, how we paced that out last year, what that looks like on areas where we need growth. So in the Atlas portal, you can look all the way down to what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses relative to your other things. It gives you starting points, and we're already digging into what are those starting points for each of the areas that we're working on, language arts, science, math. So we're working on tier 1 instruction, doing vertical alignment using our pacing guides. And then obviously our tier 2 instruction will be those individual math plans, and then looking at our students specifically. We have a lot of work to do with our special education population. That's where our scores were definitely the lowest. That's not unexpected, but it was lower than expected in my opinion. So that's definitely an area of growth. And I know Dr. Langley is working closely with the team here to shore that up. We are being challenged daily by Dr. Roberts to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students, and that in that specific population that we are challenging our teachers and our students to be teaching that on grade level content, but then also shoring up anything that is deficit, especially with our special populations. Trying to think, I think that's about it. With our interims today, I want to throw in, we did interims last week and this week. For the juniors, we did ACT boot camp. I want to publicly thank Jessica Wasserman, who headed that up for us. And so they've been working on ACT skills, getting ready for that. And then our seniors did college and career planning. So we've been working on, we did FAFSA today, along with the state scholarships that go, if they stay in Arkansas, all of those scholarships. And we're challenging all of our students that are going to college, even if they're going away to college, to go ahead and apply to Arkansas in WAC and apply for all of those scholarships so that in the spring they would have a backup plan if something doesn't work out as planned. We know life gets in the way sometimes, and sometimes has nothing to do with academics. They decide to to come up with a different plan. So we're challenging them to have those backup plans and working on those, working on all of those things with our students. So what questions do you guys have for me?
I'm in agreement with you when I see those 10% at the state, I'm like, that something's not right. So, have you heard from Department of Ed rep, somebody who's in charge of this testing, like, what is that? Is it a test issue? Are they fixing it? Because data's only,
Results were similar for ACT Aspire.
like,
we saw
data's only good if it's accurate.
They line up with historical data that I saw for the,
So truly,
For geometry and algebra.
scores are
But with
that low?
Aspire, you know, it was a general math, it had all of the different parts in it. So whenever it is, I'm teaching geometry and we're testing geometry based on those standards, I think what they really thought would happen at the state level was we're seeing those things on Aspire, but we're giving them a test that's a general mathematics test, and we're teaching geometry. So we would expect some anomalies there. Maybe we expect, but now that we're teaching geometry, we've built a test and an assessment system based on those exact standards. We probably shouldn't see scores that look like that. Now, is that a problem with tier one instruction across the state? Perhaps it is. It could be that we need to shore up our tier one instruction. I mean, that's the only way that I can look at it at Arkansas Arts Academy, because I can't, well, one, I've just never been one to blame a test. So, you know, the test is testing our state standards in geometry. Therefore, if we're teaching the state standards in geometry, then we should be, you know, at a level that shows proficiency on the regular. As a whole, we should be proficient. So that's kind of how I see it. But when I see scores that low, and Rachel being math instructional facilitator in her past life might have more to add to that
I think
than I do, but yeah.
I think one thing that would also be interesting to look at is we have, and the surrounding districts as well, have this accelerated math pathway. So starting in 8th grade, we have students taking Algebra 1, and then 9th grade, they have geometry and so forth. So when we're looking at 9th grade Algebra 1, you have a lot of those students who are in 9th grade that would have taken it as an 8th grader. So if we just divided it by cohort, I think those numbers would be higher.
It would, but it's apples to apples when, if you go back to my slides, I don't know if you can do that, Michael, but if you look at mine, I broke down, so geometry at 8th grade level, and those scores are high. So when you look at accelerated students who are taking geometry, for example, in the 8th grade or in the 9th grade, those scores look normal. They look fairly high. But when you look at the on grade level, like 9th grader taking Algebra 1, 10th grader taking geometry, that's where it really gets interesting. So take a look. If you look at grade 8, at or above grade level mastery geometry, the bottom row, we don't have any of those students, but the state average is 75. So the test is beatable. Does that make sense? Like the test is, now, would you expect, we're 8th graders, those students are 2 years ahead, accelerated by 2 years. You would expect to see more like the 97% as a state versus, because those all across all, you know, all the state, they're 2 years ahead. So you should see very high scores. But what that tells you is that test is beatable, if that makes sense. The really, really high kids can beat the test. You can see 100% at Rogers for super accelerated kids. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the test, but when you look at a score, if you go forward, Michael, to the 10th grade, and we look at those numbers again, I mean, 10%, 11% of the state on geometry, and then, 30%. Or, well, if we go up.
Superintendents or principals talking about this
I was about to
changing to
jump
the
in,
test?
so that has, this whole conversation about the accuracy of these numbers, the validity of the test questions, the pigeonhole situations that kids, like Jerry mentioned, come in, has been a real upward conversation. In fact, Dr. Jones, Bentonville drafted a letter to the governor and Secretary Leva expressing her concerns about some of these things.
They use these numbers as metrics, not only against our school, but against our teachers. And like, as a board, you know, they're telling us we have to hold our school and our faculty and our administrators responsible for their test scores. But this clearly is not, I mean, you're 3 times what the state is, so that's a gold star, but we gotta have more than 30% of our kids on grade level. But the 10% indicates some other
and
massive issue.
it's a commonality among superintendent Zooms, we have them, you know, once a week, about this. And so the positive thing I see though is the acceptance from the department to listen and think through these obstacles. They are requesting feedback. You know, I just sent Jamie a form the other day. They want feedback because they want it to be accurate. Because I forgot who mentioned it, but maybe it was Jamie. The state knew this was coming in 21 when ACT Aspire said we can't afford to run these tests anymore. So they went through these undulations of asking vendors the cost. And that's when they came up with the decision to do it in-house. And they knew this was going to be a huge learning curve, but there was no time. There wasn't enough time to work out all the kinks in the meantime.
So there is potential, especially after
Yes.
everything that Jamie said, there is potential that this is an issue with
Oh, yeah. It's like
the
the case,
process
it's like the
itself.
case 2 screeners. They literally took out questions because they realized that was not gonna be what they needed for the impact. So I think we celebrate our wins. You know, this is the result of us making hard decisions in content areas when we knew we had to. And restaffing and refocusing and aligning curriculum. We celebrate the wins, we let the state figure out, because if it's that identifiable, everyone is having the same conversation. So.
I do want to, I think there's some speculation, there is at least on my staff, that the test in geometry, for example, was very vocabulary heavy. And so they could do the math, but they got confused on vocabulary. Is this a speculation? We don't know because we can't see the test. But just walking, they were just, just walking around and looking. It was like very wordy and very vocabulary heavy without any detail. And then kids said things like, at the end of the geometry test, like, I understood the graphic that was there, but I didn't understand what the question was asking me. And so I think there may be some vocabulary issues with math because it is our lowest. I dug in just to a couple of areas real quick and I'll end because I know it's getting late. But the only way to compare in any way that seems apples to apples is where we compare to the state on Aspire and where we compare to the state on Atlas. Does that make sense? Like, I think that kind of is a little bit, so I just quickly did a couple of comparisons in the 7th and 8th grade math. And so in the 7th and 8th grade math, or for 7th grade, Aspire, we were 4.2% above the state average. Those 7th graders who took the Atlas last year, the year prior, they were 4.2% above the state average. And last year on the Atlas, they were 25% above the state average. So to me, that shows growth. And that's what's most important, is getting better. 8th grade was similar. We were 2.3 above the state average for 8th graders year prior on Aspire and 30% higher than the state average on Atlas. So to me, that shows growth for us personally. And that's the most important thing, is that we're getting better year over year. So anyway, yeah, I don't have the answers to geometry and I don't have the answers to math overall, but I know a lot of people are asking the right questions and I'm sure this is just gonna get better and more refined. The other thing, we can go into it, but the way, the amount of variance in the scores is really high right now because they haven't dialed the test in. So those, even if you get a student score, there may be a 12-point sway that it could go either direction still. So a lot of variance, and that makes it a little less, I don't know, easy to know for sure that it's an accurate test. We'll put it that way. Thank you, guys.
Our next item is 7.5, the chief executive officer evaluation.
So I'm submitting this to you. ADE wants the evaluation metrics for the year to be presented in advance. So this is what I'm presenting to you as my areas that I'll be working on this year, and what you'll use at the end of the year is that evaluation piece.
And the same as we did last year. I
Yeah.
mean, not the same goals, but it's
Yeah.
the same process.
Yes. And then really the only other thing we were going to talk about, and we can push this off if you need further discussion. We've had great success with having no phones in class. We've polled teachers and trying to get some feedback. And for the most part, they're really, and this really mostly impacts elementary, high school more. But they're very happy to have that distraction eliminated. The support that they receive from administration is it being a zero tolerance. Kids are back focusing on content in classrooms, engaging in dialogue, and that's reducing a lot of peer pressure and counselor visits that are unnecessary. So we're seeing, and we'll continue to measure success on this.
Has this parent letter gone out?
Parent letter has not gone out, so you guys see it first. We have not been using the pouches, and that's gonna be dependent upon what the administrators choose to do. We'll have them if they're available. I mean, if kids are pushing the limits, but we've seen a lot of success even without using them. The advantage of having the pouches available is just the overall consistency with all the staff. There are little pockets that sort of let some things slip. And that was even mentioned in some of the staff survey. I wish it was a little more consistent. So that's the preview, not on the fault of necessarily students, but on the adults. So, but again, that's gonna be, administrators are tracking that, that's gonna be their call. I'm just very pleased to see teachers feel supported and feel like they can really engage with their kids in a way they haven't been able to before.
Anybody have questions or thoughts on that topic? Do we have any further discussion of items since the publication of the agenda? Yes. And do we need to go to executive session? Anybody? We need an update on what we're talking about.
I will say, in addition to the agenda, Ms. Foster, we started our giving tree again. And Ms. Foster's got some ornaments, if you can. She's got ornaments again. You want to talk a little bit about?
We have our giving tree, again, the joy of our giving tree in full swing, and it is to help support our students for the holidays and gift giving. And what we do is when families reach out to us, us being Mrs. Miller and myself, and in need of some support, we make an ornament. We send them a survey type thing and gather information and make an ornament, and then kind of do it as like an angel tree type thing where people adopt the ornament, take the ornament, and then on the back are it's kind of a wish list with some clothes and then some likes and interests. And so we have some available tonight if you guys are interested, or if anybody else is interested, and I'll just leave these if that's okay. Here, and then if Susan, if you don't mind to pick them up when we're finished, thank you. Cam has been at APT practice and theater practice, and so I need to get him home. Anyway, and so there are 10 here, and we have plenty more. We have some more coming in every day, so please take some and help support us in that. And then the PTA is helping to wrap and just helping organize and things like that at the central admin office level to help support that as well. So Do you guys have any questions about that or any thoughts or anything?
When do you need this stuff back by?
So yesterday was the first day we had ornaments available. I think we are running from November 18th to December 18th-ish. So just as soon as we get the items back, we will get them wrapped and ready. And so, but those are kind of our starts and cutoffs for sure, hard stops. We want to get them out to families before the holiday break. The break, yeah, and it takes a couple of days-ish to get them kind of organized and pickups and things like that. So, it's about that time.
Do you have a way to track if an ornament is taken but not fulfilled?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This is our second year of doing it, and our first year, with everything, we learned and grew, and we're growing. And so, yes, we think we have it down now. Pretty good. But yes, and then if that's the case, we have a resource to kind of reach out and get last minute. Tie up the last minute, loose ends. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then I have a little, just a little sheet if you want to take one. All the ornaments are listed. It shows if they're female, male, grade, and so you can have a choice, and then just write your name, whomever wants to. Thank you.
We had tremendous success with that last year, and a lot of you helped out with that. And pulling into the admin, having one location really helped restore some anonymity to some of the families that were receiving the gifts, and it was incredible to have them come pick them up. You could just tell the relief from their face that they were having some support during the holidays, so it's very worthy, so thank you.
So if we don't need to go to executive session, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. See.